Hey, welcome to the Harry Man Show number 7, where we learn about drums, drumming, and the universe all around us all the time. Today I have a guest, Dave Bloom. He's a drummer in Phoenix and Texas. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for joining me this morning. I know it's a little early, but you're about 2 hours ahead of me right now, so not too bad for
A
you.
little bit ahead, and I got my coffee, so as long as I've got that, we're okay.
Yeah. I'm about a big one deep right now. So, all right. How you doing, man? What's going on?
I'm doing well. Man. The sun is shining today, and I'm in Dallas now. I know you're in Phoenix Metro. I miss the dry heat. I know everybody jokes, don't worry, it's the dry heat. It makes a massive difference, and I miss it, man. I
Really?
grew up in New York. I'm not a humidity fan. I didn't miss it. I guess I don't have a choice now, but
Yeah.
But otherwise, man, the day's going well.
Yeah, it's a little cooler this week, actually. I think we have a high of 100 degrees, but yeah, it's kind of cooling down really fast for some reason. So let me tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, obviously you're a drummer. So where'd you start?
Yeah.
What got you into drums? What was like your main influence and the turning key to get into it?
Yeah, so I grew up in a music household. We'll kind of do like a throwback a little bit. My dad had been playing guitar, since he was a little kid. In fact, he was a big, a lot of his influences impacted me. He was a big Who fan, a big Eric Clapton fan, and his first guitar ever was a very early Gibson SG. And he just, had it and played with, jam with friends like most people do when they're younger. He didn't pursue his career. He worked in the food business. But as my brother and I kind of got older, my brother, who's 4 years older than me, played trombone in the band and kind of sparked interest to play guitar. So they were kind of doing that. We were actually at a family friends event, and everybody, as far as at that time, my brother was in middle school or elementary school. But they're all friends regardless. And the music teacher was a good friend with them, and they were doing kind of like a little jazz band performance. My brother played trombone. And I knew his buddy who was the drummer, this guy Eric, and they used the school's drum set and they left it off to the side when they kind of went, did the whole party thing for the family event. And I just kind of snuck over the side. And at that time, this was 1989, I was coming up and listening to the Guns N' Roses and that whole scene, the whole era.
Appetite for Destruction, all that.
Yeah, and that's it. That's really where it started.
Yeah.
I loved Paradise City.
Mm-hmm.
We in school it's pretty cool. We did. In hindsight, I have to look back. Back then, most kids don't like teachers that disagree. I was rebellious. I was never like a bad kid or anything. I wanted to talk and I just wanted to do my thing and I got yelled at for talking all the time. But I didn't like my music teacher until years later. I ended up actually working with her again. Anyway, kind of cut it short. She used to bring popular songs into chorus concerts.
Oh,
so it wasn't just like your typical, your fall concert, your winter concert, your spring concert, and do the typical songs that go with that. We would do legit songs, and one of the songs I did was Paradise City. If there was ever obviously a song that was popular, had some curse or something, she'd modify it. But they did Paradise City. So between listening to GNR, I actually saw GNR after the fact, but listening to GNR and kind of doing it at school kind of just sparked it in my mind. So fast forward now back to that family friends event, I just went over to the side and just started playing the drum set and just playing Paradise City. I'd never touched a drum before. Really? And I had a rhythm, I guess. It was facing the wall, and I didn't realize my dad and the band teacher were behind me. Well, I was scheduled the next year to play. They do tryouts the year before. In New York, they start instruments at 4th grade. So this time in 3rd grade. And they already had tried me out, and I was going to play trumpet. And the band teacher, funny enough, he was a trumpet player. Mm-hmm. This is the middle school band teacher. Tells my dad, and he's like, your son should play drums. He's a natural. He can actually play rhythm and no problem. And so my dad went out and bought me a drum set, and the family band started. And that's really the history of it. I talk a lot, so I apologize. I'm kind of making that along.
No, I'm all about it.
but that whole intricacy of how that really developed, and it was awesome for my dad because it sparked. He hadn't played as much. He had friends that he jammed with, but suddenly, now he's going to play every day. He's got, bought one's on a drum set, the other one's got a guitar, and yeah, man, that was the start of the amazing journey that I've been lucky enough to be on.
Oh, nice, yeah. And what was your first drum set you were introduced to?
Man, well, if anybody knows me, they know I'm a Pearl player, and I was very fortunate to start on Pearl. We bought a.
Let me guess, Export.
It was an export. It was an Export Pro.
Nice.
This was 89. It was a 3-year-old 1986 Export Pro.
Mm-hmm.
That cheaper mahogany, but mahogany and poplar.
You know what? On a side note, not to interrupt you, but a side note, that became one of the most recorded snares in the 90s, I believe. A lot of guys were using those exports.
Hey, there you go, man.
I think Dave Grohl was using one for one of the whole Nirvana. I forgot which one. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, that became a really.
That's no seriously to interrupt, man. Anytime we talk about Pro, I'm cool with that.
All right, yeah, but yeah, the export. I mean, that's just the go-to for anyone getting started.
That was the mark because they came out in the 80s. It was a transition from I can't remember they owned CB drums. And it was a transition. There was a parallel kit that they were making for the CB line that was also the start, what would become the Export.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 80s, that was booming. And the Pearl Export is like the Honda Accord of the world. It is the most selling drum set of all time. And because it's budget friendly and it's not crap hardware. So it's awesome. So I started there, and we bought that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I worked in a music store for a long time, and I probably sold one of those, I don't know, every 2 or 3 days.
Oh yeah, man! Oh, they're so. I actually still have. I've had 3 exports total. I got that export. We bought it from a family friend who had just got what would go on to be eventually the pre of what would become the Pearl Masters. At that time, it was the Session Elite, I think it was. But anyway, he bought that, and we got his old kit.
Yeah, I have 2.
Years later,
I have 2 that I don't play recently, but I got that Red Hot Chili Peppers one that came out 10 years ago, and then I got a black one I'm restoring right now.
Right on, man. Dude, they're great kits. In fact, I still have I don't have that one, and I had another one that I had refurbished and sold to a friend, but I've got another export, which is a 2001 export, sitting in my parents' house because every time I visit, we'll still jam.
Nice.
And put some Aquarium Modern vintage medium heads, and dude, that kit, man, it sings. So anyway, I'm gonna go too off on.
It's all good. I just don't want to jump in and interrupt you at all there, but
no, that's right, man.
Yeah, I have a reference too. I play once in a while, but I don't really leave the house with it. I know you play the reference Pure, right?
I am sitting at a reference Pure right now. Actually.
Yeah.
I bought reference came out in late 2006, and I was in just finished undergrad. In undergrad, I bought myself a BRX. And then I was in graduate school. This was up in Albany, New York. And they had just released the reference. And I was making way more money than I thought I would teaching at a music academy.
Nice.
And I, as an independent contractor, wanted some write-offs. And I was like, I'll just buy a drum set as a write-off. Right?
Nice. It works.
But that was that when they first dropped that. That was that awesome purple craze finish.
That's what I got.
Oh, man, I missed that kit. I ended up I had too many kits when I moved out west, and good family friends who were longtime drummers. I kind of sold a few kits to each one of them, and I sold to this one dude, longtime family friend. He ended up selling it for nothing because he dropped out of college and needed cash. And I'm like, dude, I would have bought it back from you. That was my one drum set regret.
Yeah, it sounds good. I got a 10, 12, 16 on that one and 22. Just your box sizes on that one, but it's just fun to look at that kit. You know what I mean?
Gorgeous, and it sounds amazing. I will argue that as far as production kits go, we're not talking Masterworks or even Yamaha Phoenix or collectors, but as far as production kits go, my opinion anyway, that's the reference is hands down the best production kit that has ever been made. And that's again my opinion. So I'm sure I'll get bagged on for that. I know some people argue Yamaha Recording Custom or something, but no, I think just the specs on it, the fact that it is not just a blend of wood, but particular to each size. And as you know, that kick, because it's all mahogany with a couple plasma maple, is so beefy and dark compared to the 10-inch rack tom that's got some birds. So yeah.
Yeah, you put an EMAD on there. I don't know if you're an Evans guy, but it's just the head for that kit for some reason. That EMAD 22 or EMAD 2, that's what I have on it. And at
one point I was an EMAD guy. 20 years ago, almost a day actually, I switched over to Aquarian. When I was sold on talking to a rep, this is back my hometown, and I was at the store Alto Music, which I still shop at. I've shopped at forever.
Oh, nice.
And he kind of showed me. He did the tap test fresh out of the box, and it was that time I was kind of mixing up Evans and Remo, and he was tapping on heads, and I was blown away that there'd be tone on the head straight out the box. So I switched over to Super Kick 2 right around the time. So when I had the reference, the only head actually I've ever played on any. I've owned two of them, and my pure is essentially two plus components combined. And I've always played the SK2. However, I do dig the EMAD for attack. I'm not like a guy just because I'm branded doesn't mean I could. I'm not going to hate on other stuff. But the EMAD is a great head for attack. Anybody who really wants clear cut, defined.
Yeah, they're like a plug and play drum head. I mean, you put them on anything and it works.
Dude, I've seen you guys playing them on floor toms, and it sounds awesome.
Oh yeah, I haven't done that yet. But as far as Aquarian, I have the Performance 2 on a Star Classic kit upstairs. And that's on a birch cell, so they sound great. It's just hard to once you hear the perfect sound for a certain drum set, it's hard to stray away and put anything else on it.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And bass drum heads are pricey to let me test out a couple bass drum heads. All right, well, it's $50 a pop, $60 a pop. It's like, I hear you.
Yeah, and you gotta put a patch on there and it dampens it, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But so how long you have the reference pure you have now? You might have said that already, but the one you're playing through your videos?
This one I got in 2016. When I originally got it, I sold. I don't think I had any kits at that time when I moved to Phoenix. I moved to Phoenix in 2000. I'm not sure I did. Anyway, I moved to Phoenix in 2013. And then I can't remember what I had at that time. Or maybe it was an export that I had just kind of hanging on to.
You had a Masters in that one video when I first saw you on the Phoenix.
That's right. Yeah. I had my Masters. Forget that. That's Amber. I ended up selling Amber to one of my best friends who treasured it, so that was a good sell. But anyway, I totally forgot about that. I had Amber, my Masters BRX, and actually originally I used to play that with Performance 2 heads, Birch Kit Performance 2. But anyway, I had sold that to him, and I had export kind of hanging. And then I got this guy. The setup I got when I first got it was 10, 12, 14, 20. Then I ended up finding a dude who lived what are the chances? It's a hard to find finish. And a dude who lived 2 or 3 miles from me in Chandler. And those listening don't know Phoenix. Chandler is a little bit south of Phoenix. If you're driving on I-10 going towards Tucson, that's on the
202
west side.
Are you talking about?
Yeah, 202 and I-10. It's right over there. But anyway, he lived a couple miles from me because I was in Awatuki, which is the south side of South Mountain in Phoenix. It was 22, 10, 13, 16 setup, and was just trying to get rid of it for a while. And I was like, yeah, dude, because he purchased a Stoner kit. He's trying to fund that. So he gave me a killer deal. I think I paid $1,500 for that. Ended up selling the 10 because I already had a 10. And then picked up an 8 and an 18. So I've got, for this kit, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. All I needed is one is a matching snare.
Oh, nice.
And a gong bass, and I'll have everything you could possibly.
Yeah, it's a really nice.
That all started in 2016, though.
Yeah, that's a nice kit. And just to kind of give a shout out, I kind of first started seeing you on the Phoenix area drummers, the pad site. So
yeah, I'll totally give a shout out to them, man.
Yeah, they're good guys. I think Matt runs it still, and I remember seeing you as a featured drummer on there. And that's a good resource.
Matt, it is great. And for anybody that's in there, I don't know what the numbers are up. I'm not as active on it anymore. I'll post probably every couple of weeks on there. I used to be on a daily basis. It's just a great collection. I think you guys are up to 18 drummers. We do gatherings. There were clinics. We had before I left, a couple months before I left last January, Todd Suckerman came and he actually played on. He used my Masters MMX and my Reference Pure for his master class. A couple other dudes. Who else did we have? I can't remember. The drummer used to be for Camelot. He's a good buddy of, and now he's for Queensrÿche. Good buddy of Matt. But anyway, bunch of cool guys, and everybody is there's nowhere else that has something like that. I have moved around. I've lived in 4 states, and I've kind of tried to get things going and kind of help people be cohesive with that nature. But there's nothing like the Phoenix area drummer thing. So right on for Matt for kind of pushing that. It's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, there's not one in Texas or anything like that?
No, I can't. Anywhere you go, there's a million different musician groups. And if there's a drum group, it's probably got, a couple hundred people. And, it's kind of faint. There are way too many Facebook groups. I feel like it's a really hard thing to make happen. There is what's cool. Shane McCauley does a drummer's lunch. This year we actually couldn't do it because of the pandemic. It's usually in March. In fact, I moved out last March, 2019, on March 11th, 3/11 day, and March 16th, I think it was like a Tuesday or something. He did this drummer's lunch, and it's an annual thing. He's been doing it for, I think this was like the last year was the 17th or 18th one or something like that. And there was like 60 drummers. So there is a collective, and there's a female drummer, a breast cancer survivor, who she's actually pretty famous with this. The Breast Cancer Can Stick It website and fundraiser, and she does like a big event every year. And you get a lot, like Rich Redmond came out, and you get a bunch of Nashville guys coming down, and people from Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that aspect of the gathering, kind of an annual thing, or a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nothing like PAD because it's just a constant. It is to the Phoenix drum world that my drum set on Facebook group, is on an international level where it's a big collective.
Yeah,
and it's so cool because I've not seen that anywhere. Not Florida. There's certain places that have kind of groups, but they're just not as active. Florida's got one. California's got one. Pacific Northwest, nothing like PAD, man. It really is a unique beast, and Phoenix is super fortunate to have that.
Yeah, I feel fortunate to be part of it too, and that's a really cool feeling too as well. As far as pages, and let's plug you a little bit. Where's a good place to see you on social media? And I know you have a lot of YouTube videos up there, but what's like your primary?
I do. For me, well, I mean, my ask or my hashtag Dave Bloom Drums, but I've got DaveBloomDrums.com,
mm-hmm.
which will link you to all that. So that's the easy one, easy to remember, DaveBloomDrums.com.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got a couple of different YouTube channels for different purposes. So I made I can't even remember what it's called. If you look up Dave Bloom Drums, drumless tracks, I think it might even be like Dave Bloom drumless tracks. I can't remember. But anyway, I put like several dozen drumless tracks during the pandemic. People were bored and needed something to practice, and I've been in music education as a drum instructor for 20 years, and I'm like, I'll just throw some stuff up on there, and so there's that. There's my main YouTube page, which is Dave Bloom Drums Online. So just youtube.com/Dave Bloom Drums Online. And then for my studio stuff, which is, I actually just started, I just revamped the website for tracking, is Dave Bloom Drums Studio, I think. I can't remember. I don't know.
Yeah, no worries. I didn't mean to throw you on the spot there. I apologize for that.
That's all right. No, a couple more cups of coffee and I'll remember all this stuff.
All right. And then you give online lessons right now? Is that what you're doing?
I do virtual lessons. So I started teaching drum lessons in person 20 years ago, back in college. And then probably like 13 years or so ago, I had done a few, wasn't really far away, but I was in college up in the Capital Region in New York, but I was from downstate near the city. And I had done a couple of Skype lessons with some different students that I had previously. So I kind of got in early doing virtual, but it was still a pretty small percentage.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2010, when I moved out west, Skype became a means for me to still teach previous students who are still in New York. And then Facebook, I know started in 2005 and then been below for another couple of years. But before that was MySpace, and before that was Friendster. And as a touring drummer at that time, early 2000s, I had made so many of these connections that I started to kind of branch out and teach different students here and there virtually. Mm-hmm. Now, when I moved to Texas, or in that process, I pushed most of my students virtually. And anybody who didn't want to do virtually, obviously, I was moving, so I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. I already had it pretty spread at that point. I was already teaching, people in most continents. Mm-hmm. And out here, when I got out here, I had a handful in person, and most of them I'd switched to virtual. And with obvious reasons, everything's virtual now. Mm-hmm. And I like it that way. I know some people don't. I think it was a huge adjustment for me. And there's a conversation you and I had previously. My view of kind of education, music education, or in general in the world is as, especially younger people, as we look forward, what's their future and what's or even really how it's developing now due to the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So I think virtual is the way to go. It gives you so much more access.
And do you feel like you lose any of the element of like the human side of it at all, or you just feel like you got used to it?
I don't. I'll tell you what got me used to it. when I lived in Colorado, I didn't research where I'm moving to. I got sponsored in skiing, and I just moved out without researching. I got a job teaching out there and in a school district that worked 4 days a week, and I could ski 3 days a week, and that was cool with me. And I went out there, and it was super rural and solitary. So my connection to the world became social media when I wasn't traveling and skiing. The company flew me around quite often. So when I wasn't, and it was during the week, and I was done teaching in the classroom, it was pretty solitary. So I got used to social media and such being my, that digital means became, I understood it, I comprehended. Yeah, I didn't thirst necessarily, and I'm a social person. I'm not, kind of a stay-at-home person. But I got used to it, and I learned to manage that way, not just kind of dealing with it, but like, hey, that's the norm. That's okay. So, you push that into this education component of teaching people. I think more of the elements can get lost with quality of sound, but you're coaching someone, and it needs to be that you're more attentive as a teacher. I think that's probably the hardest thing. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law both are instrumental teachers.
Oh, nice.
And they really struggle with that. One teaches French horn and a few other brass, but French horns are primary, and the other one teaches baritone, tuba, sousaphone. And for them, it's posture and stuff, and they find an issue. I don't, because I'm used to being attuned to all of those elements while I'm teaching virtually, versus not. I don't have to walk around someone in a room and pay attention to those things.
Gotcha.
Because I've done it for so long, and I think that's the big thing. I think people who are proponents against it are really not allowing themselves to adapt and to, they're resisting it versus being aware of it. And that's the world today. I mean, with the risks, whether or not people, allow themselves or want to buy into the restrictions and the changes that are going on, the reality of our world right now is this virtual digital, conversion. It's the same way we went from, CDs to primarily, it was the Napster age, right? And then it was LimeWire, and that sharing, that everything has constantly made you shift to the digital world, and it's happening on whole scale. And I think for people who are used to doing so much in person, well, think about shopping online. Yeah, it's different buying a T-shirt, holding up your chest, and making sure it's the right size. But over time, people have grown to see Amazon and other digital shopping as the norm, and culture has adapted to that. And I see the same thing, and I've been a proponent of that with music education for the same reason. It's inevitable, and the world changes. And just as a cell phone made it easier to communicate with people without having to find a payphone and surf the internet stuff. So that's my, I'm okay with it. I don't find any struggle whatsoever. I prefer it. I like it. It keeps everything very efficient for everybody, for the student and myself. So.
Yeah, it's definitely an obvious push for it. The only downside I see is I'm more of a when it comes to music stores, I like to go in and look at the used stuff and all that fun stuff, but I can see where like the touch and the musician buying gear that can kind of alter it a little bit. But I mean,
if you're buying a guitar, but I think like this day and age with cymbals too. I mean, what is it, mycymbal.com, and I know one of the Nashville shops, and then Drum Center of Portsmouth, which I had the chance to visit last summer. They so many of them do demos, and they have, they're not recording it with a phone. That's the big. I mean, it also matters what you got, but so many companies are demoing these things. Now, I know for like, when you're buying a guitar, there are, there's a feel, and there's a sound. It's kind of like buying a drum shell. But if, here's the adaptation. Companies have return policies. Company had, exchange rates, and they'll, if you're buying a guitar but you need to exchange it for something else, they might not, restocking fees, which was a huge thing in the past, is not so as much.
Yeah,
so there are ways around that where you can have that guitar shipped to you, and you're like, you just put it back in the box, and they, a company gives you a return label, and especially the big budget store. So like, to me, just as I said with education, there's so many ways around it. I love this. Don't get me wrong. I love sitting in a store and feeling the gear. And the downside is, of course, there's job loss, and these guys who have this information or not. Right now, they become they talk to you on the phone versus in person about gear and recommendation and stuff. So there's definitely an element that is lost, but it's not like we've gone 100% away from it. But in the flip side, you either in this world, in a reality, not current world, but this world in general, is progress is going to happen, and people who don't adapt, right, they fade away. So it's either stay afloat or sink, and I think that's the important mentality to take over it. Sure, is there a difference of sitting in a room with somebody, or being a school teacher? The biggest thing that kids miss about school is being there with their friends.
Yeah.
So there's totally these changed elements, but in the same token, those same kids will sit and play Fortnite or Call of Duty, for 16 hours a day, every day in the summer, right? I mean, and just talk to their friends through the headset. So I think it's like, the window into the future is there, and we just kind of need to, roll with it and see how it goes.
Yeah, I definitely see the change, and it's even influenced me to start this podcast and all that. And some people I can have here in my place, but the way technology is and how easy software is, and you can get anybody across the country and have fun for a couple, talk about things.
Absolutely.
And, so I definitely see the positives, but having someone in front of you it's just different. But it's all a change.
Yeah.
What go back to gear? I mean, what kind of mics are you? Sorry, I didn't mean to rant on that, but
that's all right.
Going back to gear, what kind of mics are you using for your lessons and your YouTube? Because I know you have some really nice Shure mics, I believe, on it, right?
I've actually even dumped some more money. So not dumped. I guess dump. All right, it's broke now. No. So for the go-to has typically been for the industry, right? The SM57. So I kind of stocked up. Of course, it was my snare go-to. And if you watch some of my older videos, I had every rack tom set up with an SM57. Floor toms just kind of give some beefier sound. I had an AKG G112, which is what I use for the kick, and I just kind of acquired more. I ended up having, I think I have 4 of those now. I've got like 7 or 8 SM57s. And then I acquired and I used overheads and upgrade. I went to the SM81s by Shure. But recently, a month and a half, 2 months ago now, I picked up an Earthworks kit. And Earthworks, first of all, what's really cool is their DM20, which is, the snare tom mic. It's kind of their SM57, but on a much more elevated scale. Earthworks is known for making extremely transparent microphones. So, now some people like that, some people don't, right? Some people want color, and obviously you can EQ in color, or, different mics have their own character, and, it's like comparing, different really, high-end large diaphragm condensers, which I picked up a couple too. But I went with Earthworks, so I'm using Earthworks. For the session I'm literally sitting in that I was tracking yesterday and today. Kind of, over the top. I'm sitting on a 4-piece kit, kick, snare, 2 rack toms, cast ride, 2 crashes, and I've got 13 mics set up, and it's a plethora of stuff. So I've got using a D112 on the outside, a Earthworks SR20 on the inside. I've got Earthworks DM20s on the top of the snare and on both toms. SM57 by Shure on the bottom. I've got the Shure SM81s on ride hi-hats. Earthworks SR25s, which is one of their 2 overheads, which are phenomenally clear, and that's the big thing, and that's their selling point. And then I've also got some room mics. I've got a Slate digital virtual mic that I model in the actual mix with the Sony 800, which is, if you went out and bought that, you're spending $15,000. And then I've got opposite end, which is really cool, that this client requested. I've got stereo room mic set up with an XY pattern facing away with a slight pitch up. And those are Octava 012, which are really cool microphones that when I moved out here, the guy was getting rid of his entire collection of microphones. And those I think are like $350 each. And I paid $300 for a matched trio, which is awesome.
Oh, nice.
And I love, and a lot of the videos that I was doing and a lot of the live streams, that the snare, everybody was loving on that snare, and then the sound of the cymbals. Those 2 actually relatively close mics overhead, and they're phenomenal microphones. So anybody get it? If you're listening, you want a great set of small diaphragm condensers. They come with attachments that either make them really directional or omni. So it's really cool. So I've got a whole.
Yeah, it sounds like you got an entourage on there. That's really good stuff.
I had picked up even a couple more. I've got all in all that Earthworks kit. It was pricey. It was $3,000, but it was 4 of the DM20s and then their kick mic, that SR20, and then the 2 overheads SR25. And then again, I got my Shure, and I also picked up some of the other Slate modeling mics, the ML2, which are really cool. And those model MD421s with Sennheiser is pretty good. But I actually got talked into the Earthworks by a buddy of mine, Casey Cooper. I'm sure anybody's a drummer knows Casey from he's got like 2.5 million followers on YouTube. But he ends up signing a deal with them to use them exclusively.
Oh, nice.
And instead of just like Dave, you should get this.
What was his name again? I'm sorry, what was his name again?
That's right, Casey Cooper. Casey Cooper.
Oh, Casey, you just won that contest with them too, right?
I did. I won. If you're listening, don't try and connect that. There was nothing rigged about it. I did an entry in the contest, and I was, anytime I track, being a guy who does studio sessions regularly, I want to play for the music. I used to do the chop videos, like my Cookie of the Day lessons, those 60-second lessons to show you. But for me, when I'm tracking, I don't want to show off. I want to, compliment the music and add some character to it.
Yeah,
so my first entry was totally that. And then after I got these new mics, and I was like, I'll do another entry. And I finished the back wall in the studio with has a cool backdrop. And I was like, all right. And I set up like ridiculous things, because Casey will set up for videos sometimes like drums all over the place. So I put like 2 rocketons in the air. I had kind of a Ray Luzier China hanging up, way up high, and just this ridiculous setup. And I ended up coming up with a really cool groove for the verse, using everything, in a very melodic and spacious way. And that was the component that ended up winning, in the contest and get me that snare drum. But he's a really cool dude.
So did he provide that track, or was it something that everyone made on their own? I didn't understand.
No. There was one he provided, but it was given to him by Orlando drummer.
Okay.
I totally forgot his first name. Whatever. Anyway, he provided that, and then that was just an ongoing thing for a couple months. And he was doing another contest, because I just won the other one, I can't win this one, so I'm not even enter. But no, he's doing another one where you can win a Pearl. I think it's Pearl Export, actually.
Oh, nice.
And tie back to the conversation. But he's a great dude. But anyway, we chat and we'll text and get on the phone, a couple times a week. And he was just talking up, the microphone. So I checked him out, and because I wasn't sure what mics I wanted to get, I kind of had an idea. I wanted MD421 for Tom, because those are just the long-standing go-to Tom mics. And it ended up working out full circle, because after I got, these Tom mics, I love them. They're for anybody who records or even streams. They're a huge investment as far as money-wise, but they do such a great job isolation. And by the way, I have no endorsement, so I'm not getting money for talking about this, but they are the least, or I should say the most bleed resistant, or the least bleed you'll get out of mics I've ever used in my life. And I've tried a lot of microphones. I've got higher insertions with a lot of really nice studios that have great gear, and I've never heard microphones that bleed as little as these, yet give such a transparent sound. Yeah. But I ended up getting the ML2s. I just picked up a couple weeks ago the ML1, the ML2, new that would run. The ML1 is $900, and the ML2 is actually pretty cheap at $150 each. And I'm getting from somebody I know who in the studio, who actually they signed a deal with Earthworks. I got the mic for under $600, and the ML2s spot on to a model of the MD421. So if you're keeping up with that, that's a lot of letters.
Oh yeah, and I am. And just on a side note too, I woke up to that good news. I saw you on that Pearl page, and I was like, man, that's awesome, dude. Like,
I know, dude, it was pretty dope. And they've posted me here and there, but that was really cool.
So that wasn't your first time there?
It was not. They posted a couple. I've been very fortunate to. I'll tag them all the time because I've been playing Pearl forever, and I'm one of the admins of the Pearl Drums for Life Facebook group. And we got 6,000 worldwide Pearl drummers. So it kind of worked out. They posted a couple times in the past, and it's usually, for anybody who knows how the larger companies operate. And it's not something like cymbal companies do different, but the larger drum companies, it's usually kind of like they'll post usually did a really good sound quality demo of a product.
Yeah.
You know,
you definitely provide that. Yeah.
So I've done like, hey, check out this new thing, and I kind of, so I've had those kind of things reposted and such.
No, but you were on the main Pearls page. That's what I was trying to point out. Like,
and that's what I'm saying too. They've done like little shares, but this was the first time it wasn't just like, here's a demo of product.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had Pearl, and I have a Sabian endorsement. I have a couple other endorsements for companies. This was the first time I've ever had any of the companies post that, and then also give a link directly to my YouTube page with the contest video and all that stuff. So it's really cool. That was like stellar. Like that was a high point in my life.
Yeah, you woke up and probably one of those feelings. I was happy for you, man. I woke up and saw that. I'm like, awesome, dude. That guy's gonna be on my show this week.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm a little bit of a late bloomer. I think we talked about this about a couple weeks ago, but getting into the software and recording, I'm just starting with Logic. What would you recommend, and what do you use for as far as software for recording?
So for my DAW, for those of you who don't know what DAW means, it's just your software interface that you would do your recording, do your tracking with.
Mm-hmm.
I use Logic. I have a limited version of Pro Tools only because sometimes clients will, send me a section or ask for the session back or just like, hey, I need to use Pro Tools. Even though in most cases I'm exporting mono wave tracks of each microphone for each song and sending them that, got to make the customer happy.
Mm-hmm.
But I prefer Logic. The advantage of Logic over Pro Tools is financially, you're not paying an annual upgrade fee, or if you don't, you go the option where you just buy Pro Tools outright.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get the upgrade, and that's sometimes a big deal, sometimes not. I got friends who are still working on the Digi 002 rack set up with 10 years old Pro Tools. They're like, whatever. I mean, I'm just tracking, and
Mm-hmm.
so there are changes that happen, but if you're just concerned with quality, you're working on like 44.1. And you're just, you're bouncing your tracks. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And there are plenty of people who use Reaper, which is free, or they do Studio One or Cakewalk or Cubase, or, where they're doing more beat-based stuff, and they're using like Ableton. There's a million different things out there. So as far as software, it doesn't matter. I like Logic because I'm an Apple guy, and
same here.
And I got an educator discount, so I only paid, I think, $150 or $200 for it.
Good deal. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'm using that Scarlett interface I was telling you about, and it's definitely a big learning curve right now. But I think Scarlett, Apple, and Logic are probably the most easiest to kind of jump into.
Oh, it is. The Focusrite Scarlett series has actually been a fairly, not long term, but probably over the last 5 to 10 years, a go-to. I mean, if you talk about what drummers typically, because drummers need more ins, right? You can spend, $500 for, a higher end 2-input interface if you're just doing vocals or guitar, or, whatever. But drummers, we need ins. We're micing a larger kit. So the Scarlett, and I used this for a long time. The Focusrite Scarlett 18i20 is like a long time staple for drummers over the past 5 or 10 years. And I just sold mine only because I upgrade and spent, the big upgrade, and I went with an Apollo.
Nice.
X8P. There we go. But I still have my Focusrite Octapre Mark II. So I still got 8 preamps by them, and there's tiers that you realize where you're stepping into, and it's based on really goals more than there are people who buy things for show, for looks, but like to get quality stuff that you're not working with a major studio. The Scarlett, you got either, I can't remember if it's the Solo or the 2i2, but that is totally a solid buy for anybody who kind of even just wants to dive into stuff and kind of enter that world. It's such a good buy, and it lasts, not in the sense of just quality build, but means the sound you're getting out of it. It's not like, oh man, they're going to upgrade massively the next couple of years.
Oh, no.
They're great buys, and I definitely, I recommend those
Yeah, I'm definitely in the experimental phase. I've lost hours and days. No, I shouldn't say lost, but I've definitely got deep just moving mics all day and trying things out and trying to muffle toms. It's one of those things I wish I would have jumped in 10 years ago, but better now than late. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's funny you mention that because that's what most people do, right? When it comes down to it, the guys who have the experience, the go-to producers, the go-to engineers in the big studios, at one point they were just, stage hands helping out, or interns move stuff around, and it's still a matter of. I watched a good video. Let me look it up real quick. Who the guy's name was, because I just blanked out on me. I probably don't even have it on here anymore. But anyway, I watched a good video talking about sound control, and at first it talked about isolation, and that's one thing drummers have, and they don't know what they're doing because everybody learns. They just throw foam up on their walls, thinking that's going to soundproof their room or do some sound control treatment. But
no.
But he was talking about it. Yeah, right. But he says, I mean, people don't know. People, look, we've all bought. I've got foam, right? Do I really use it? No, but we all, we make that investment to learn. But anyway, he was talking about, you can hire it's an acoustician. I don't know, acoustician. I can't pronounce it.
I know what you're saying.
But the individual who comes in and measures and use their gear and figures out where your weak points are and where you need to treat, etc. And I actually just dealt with one through Oralex, not for their phone, but a consultant, which is why I chose the placement of my panels that I did hang and bass tracks and such. And those guys who've been doing it forever, it's still just just trial and error. So they go into a major studio, or they're building a major studio, or they're going into Blackbird Studios in Nashville and changing the board out or adding new monitors and different monitors, and they're moving the mixing board to the left an inch and then to the right an inch, and anybody could do that. They know what they're doing, but there are things that are always going to be trial and error.
Yeah,
so you doing that to get the best sound for your room or your studio space or someone's garage. I mean, that is just normal. For me, when I was hanging my clouds over my drum set, you're sliding things over an inch and then listening it through the mic and listening in the room, and it's normal. So no matter how long you've been in it, yeah, the more experience you kind of know where to start,
mm-hmm.
but it's all just kind of messing around and trial and error. Unless if you're somebody who uses typically the same exact setup every time,
mm-hmm.
there are plenty of drummers, pro remote session drummers like myself, but typically we'll just use, they might swap, some drums here and there, but just swap the snare or use the same type of stuff and know their drums really well. They might just use, kick, rack, floor, snare, ride, half, 2 crashes, typically use most of the same crashes and maybe go between like 5 or 6 snares. At that point, yeah, you know it and you know your space.
Mm-hmm.
But the second you step into somebody else's space, no matter how much you know, it's all trial and error. So,
all right. And then, who are you watching on YouTube as far as drummers? I mean, who's still like your influence, and who do you think's up and coming? Who to check out?
I was never that guy. There are phases that I've gone through.
Mm-hmm, same here.
And there are drummers that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
There was never, I remember, most drummers from, 8 years old to 45 years old went through, in the past 15 years, the chop phase, right? Like, oh man, like that was glorious. I need to learn everything they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And Eric Moore, so I like watch Eric Moore a lot, in that phase.
Yeah, he's got that ripple fast.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But you watch, you watch your chop guys and then of course it gets dubbed gospel chops because, that was an element that always existed, in this up-tempo gospel music.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of, bled into everything, right? Culturally, music will always mix. Nobody can say something is dead. Nobody can say, hate. They can, but you hate on a certain music, listen to what's going on, like people who hate on pop music. Listen to the drummers that are playing. I mean, like Ryan Fraser Moore. The dude is a...
I got to hang out with him. He borrowed one of my drum kits. He's a really good drummer. So, and I went to one of his clinics as well.
He is phenomenal.
Yeah.
He is a groove king, dude. He is
nice guy too.
There was a thing they did. Fabian does their streams on Tuesdays, and he was on it with ePanda, and then I can't remember the girl's name, but I think he has the most performances in Super Bowl history.
Yeah.
He played 3 Super Bowls. The other ePanda and the other person played 2. But anyway, but there's a reason, and it's not like it's the same group.
Mm-hmm.
He played 2 with Justin Timberlake and 1 with Madonna.
Christina Aguilera too.
Groove, math. He crushes it. There's a pop, because you have to be so precise and locked in. But pop drummers it's not just their pocket, they are so precise because you're playing with backing tracks in front of thousands. I mean, it's pop now is what 80s hair bands was then.
Yeah.
But now factor in, the preciseness you have to have. And yes, people are good with clicks, but I mean, like, he is a monster groove drummer. So, like, stuff like that. I love watching him play. Throw back, one of my favorite drummers, Carter Buford.
Oh, yeah.
His Matthews Band. I love Chad Sexton 311.
Yeah.
Keith Moon, he's a very polarizing guy when it comes to drumming. Todd Suckerman gave a cool perspective. He said he's like a jazz drummer in the rock world. Not that he's playing jazz, but the idea that there is foundation with a lot of improv. I like that perspective.
Yeah.
Todd's great, but I don't like stare at individual drummers and like study them so much that I study styles and concepts.
Mm-hmm.
My phase this summer, I guess maybe my pandemic drummer that I've studied a lot of is Matt Garska.
Nice.
Right?
Animals as Leaders, right?
He is, he's phenomenal, but I love his approach. He's a great guy. Actually, he's a very studied drummer. So
I saw him in a small club up in Scottsdale about 5 or 6 years ago. I got to meet him after that. But yeah, I just watched him the whole time, to be honest with you.
He's not just a prog drummer, which is amazing. He's a jazz guy. He's a studier. Like, he's not just a guy who plays that style of music, which is really cool. Like, he does some great jazz trio stuff. But I love his view of time. So I love odd time. I'm very into prog, but I like his view of time and how that adds polyrhythm. It's like Danny Carey mixed with Tony Waits Jr. on steroids. All 3 drummers I love.
Yeah.
So for me, he's the guy who you could say studied, but not just to watch him, but like the concept he talks about. So like playing 3 against 5, and then taking like a David Garibaldi approach. So he's a guy I studied for a couple of years, 2006 to 2008 of Tower Power, and it's the dynamic placement. That's kind of what Matt does. So it's grooves with dynamic placement. But as far as people I just watched regularly, I think the only drummer the past 6 months that I've really enjoyed watching, because I enjoy his perspective and how he talks, the 80-20 drummer. He's a really cool guy. So anybody out there listening, check out the 80-20 drummer. Really cool dude from Berkeley, still lives up in Boston area. But he has this cool perspective, and he purposely goes out of his way to be weird and unique about it. And it's like, and he's got a good dry sense of humor, so it's fun to watch his stuff. But he has good perspectives that make you think about things, and he picks little pieces that are concepts that connect a bunch of great drummers in different areas and helps you pick out. And since I'm a guy who enjoys concept-based learning versus just studying one thing, I think concept-based learning helps people more. That's how I like to teach that way. And someone might request an individual thing, but when it comes to my students, I've got 37 students right now.
Oh, nice.
It's all concept-based, and you cover more ground that way, and you dive deeper.
So you don't just stick with one book; you just kind of jump around, is what you're saying?
I'm not if we're really doing books, there are stick control and then the follow-up rebound.
Nice.
Those two George L. Stones, because there's so much you can do with them. There's things that people don't understand actually that were intended with their face value, but there's so many things you can do with them in general. I love New Breed, and there's some great books, right? You like stick base and stuff, but I typically don't sit with a book because different drummers, I don't treat a one-size-fits-all because everybody's different. People have different amount of time to practice. For the last couple of months, some people had more time, some people had less time because their life was more hectic. So I take concept-based approach and I tailor it to the individual. So there may be similar drummers that we're working on somewhat similar things because they have similar goals, but their interests are important and not just this is how you should do it. I'm not one of those teachers. So there could be a rabbit hole that takes two drummers, very different directions. I've got a mother and a son from the Philippines.
Oh, nice.
We work together on we have Sunday evening lessons, 13-hour difference, which is that's their Monday morning time. And they both start around the same time, and they it's kind of like a cool bonding experience. But we're not following the identical path. The son progressed more with his left foot, so we're doing left foot ostinatos in something that I've taught for a long time, but I borrowed the phrase of Rosetta Stone from Todd Suckman, from the Newbury book, from Chris Coleman. But he's doing more left foot stuff, while the mom is doing right hand ostinatos and adding ghost notes. So two people, similar path, but we're kind of following different directions. So that's kind of my approach. So if we were just using a book, you could do that if you're expanding, but a book doesn't say face size unless people need to see it. Here's the concept. So they've both gotten really deep, and these are drummers only playing for 6 months, and you got a kid playing left foot ostinatos while he's playing various bass drum patterns.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a Bozio in the making. A Bozio in the making.
So, yeah. So cool, man. Cool. So I love it, and that's why I like looking at concepts of drummers versus just sitting there and gawking at like I used to, right? We all went through the Eric Moore phase or whoever it was, or the Steve Gadd or the Buddy Rich, but yeah, I'm seeking out concepts. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I change like the weather every week. I'm always on to something new, or go back and watch old stuff and go, oh, you know what? I can actually do that now.
Exactly, and it's internet ADHD. No, I have ADHD, so I can say it's internet ADHD. Though, it really is like our culture. It's not that everybody had right. People like to say that easily, but no, it's the idea that cultural shift. Right, just go back to what we were talking about at the beginning. People need stuff in chunks. My first degree is in video and audio production. And one of the first things we learn is that when you're making your edits, your cuts should always average about 5 seconds. And if you watch movies, with the exception of like monologue scenes where it's stellar kind of face value performance, there's so many cuts, and it's changed over the last 20 years from where I started college in '99. I was getting that degree, and now it is 3 seconds is the average. And it's that quick digestion. Well, that is our attention span. And it's the same way, right? If you're making a video, you're not going to grab someone if you don't have something interesting within the first 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And then the way that people seek out things, or you think about what we want, our interests, right? As drummers, we'll say, because we're talking about drumming, but with anything, I was a pro skier for 3 years, and I skied as a snowboarder for 17 years. When I watch these things, they're, I'm watching one idea, and then I'm like changing. One day I'm watching, an old Warren Miller film, and then the next day I'm like, I have no interest in that. I want to watch, a free skiing, watching somebody throw doubles and triples, but that's like with drumming or with food, right? We're watching, Cupcake Wars or whatever it is. And my wife likes to watch a lot of those things. Yeah. And the next day, I want to watch, how people are searing things on cast iron, grill pans, and we're constantly seeking different things. To sit down and say this is what we're into, you can ask anybody that question, 2 weeks later. And it's even somebody who's into vinyl, right? People like sit down and cherish records. Nobody buys a record at a time and sits on that record for 3 months. Yeah. They buy a record, the next time there's a shop, maybe they pick up a couple more. Yeah. And they're on to the next thing. And as you said, we go back, we rediscover things, and if it's drumming, we're like, it's either, oh look, I could do that now. Like that's awesome. Like I didn't look at the journey I'm on, or oh crap, I forgot about that. Let me go brush up on that. And that's what it is. Because I watch a dude like Mac Garska, and I'm like doing all these things. And when I get done practicing, it's more of a mental burn than a physical burn. Like I don't feel like I'm not like warmed up where I can go and blast out shots after that. But I can play, awesome polyrhythms. I'm obsessed with polyrhythms right now. Yeah. But then I go back and I watch Brian Fraser Moore. And then I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna go back, and it's just gonna be 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and ostinato on the hi-hat with accents, on the and snare maybe 2 and 4 with a few ghost notes, and it's the kick, and I'm going at 130 beats a minute playing, triple stroke patterns. So it's a different, it's a different element, and they're so different in what they are that you're like, oh, I forgot about, the polyrhythms, or I forgot about, whatever it is, right? My just basic halftime jazz, swim. So it's it's ADHD for our consumption.
Oh yeah, and I definitely think we're stretching out the brain bandwidth. And that's just part of evolution. We're just taking in because I remember I had to drive to a music store just to look at a modern drummer. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
And that was like just a journey to do that. But now it's like you forgot what you were doing 20 minutes ago, and it's like you said,
Exactly.
ADHD. But I'm gonna wrap it up here. I know you're a busy guy and you got some lessons coming up here shortly. We just plug you one more time on your lessons and your YouTube and all that?
Yeah. So easy. Go to davebloomdrums.com. And then that's got, the links to all my social media. It's got links to lesson stuff. But if you're interested in lessons, drum lessons with davebloom@gmail.com. And then all the social medias are at Dave Bloom Drums or hashtag Dave Bloom Drums to keep it simple. Hey man, dude, I want to thank you so much for having me. I know we rested or chilled on a topic and kind of went extensively.
We can always do a part 2, Dave Bloom. I mean, I feel like I could have picked your brain for another 3 or 4 hours easily, but these things fly when you do them.
As everybody knows, and as you know now, man, I'm a talker. So if you ever lost in a conversation, it's nice to have a glass of wine or a beer or a drink and chill and talk, and those conversations will not end.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I mean, I just looked at the timer. I'm like, oh, all right. Yeah, all right. But just to plug myself, we're a new podcast, obviously, so you can find us on YouTube. This will be up sometime today. Facebook, Instagram, just the Harry Man Show, Spotify, and Apple. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and thanks a lot to Dave. You guys have a good day, okay?